Hi, Paul Flies. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm pretty excited about this video. Usually you see me on this channel flying around the Cirrus SR-22. In this video, I'm flying in an extra 300L. This is a two-seat, fully aerobatic airplane stressed to plus or minus 10 Gs. The flight today in this airplane is part of the Mike Goulian Aviation Performance Flying series of flights. This is flight number 2, where we go up and we explore spins, both incipient spins and fully developed spins, where we enter the spin and then recover from it. I consider this flight a training flight for me, but to be honest with you, this has been a bucket list item for me to actually spin an airplane and do a loop in an airplane, which you'll see me do at the end of the video. So before we actually get to the maneuvers, just one more thing I'd like to say. This video is not flight instruction, and I can't emphasize that enough. I'm going to be talking about some of the quote-unquote technical terms that we use in this spin recovery, and I'm just going to talk about them in generalities. It's not instruction. If you're a pilot or you want to be a pilot and you want to learn about this stuff, find a qualified flight instructor to teach it to you and learn it properly. The guy sitting behind me on these flights, his name is Brian. He works for Mike Goulian Aviation. And this guy has been around. He was an Air Force pilot. He was actually the leader, squadron leader for the Thunderbirds. This guy has had aircraft in unusual attitudes that I can't even dream of and has successfully recovered from them. So it's nice to know I have this guy back there. If I totally screw up, he can fix it in a second. So let's get into this flight. I'm going to be a little chatty during this video. Some people like that, some people don't. Those of you who don't, I apologize. You can turn the volume off and just watch the video. The goal here is to spin an airplane. That's what we're looking for. That's part of the training. I'm not going to explain what a spin is. You can Google that if you'd like. You're going to see what a spin looks like from the inside of the airplane, from the outside of the airplane in this video. In order to spin an airplane, two things are required. First of all, you have to stall the wing. The second thing that's required is yaw. Let's talk about yaw for a second. Ideally, when the airplane's flying through the air, the tip of the nose spinner and the rearmost portion of the airplane, usually the rudder, the back of the rudder, are in perfect alignment, and the airplane's flying straight through the air. Now that isn't always the case. There's things that can upset that. So aircraft designers give pilots a control to control that, and that's called the rudder. The rudder is actuated with the pilot's feet. Push it on the right rudder, yaws the plane to the right. Push it on the left rudder, yaws the plane to the left. When a pilot talks about stalling the aircraft, this doesn't mean stalling the engine or shutting down the engine. It actually means stalling the wing. A wing, in order to fly, requires air flowing over the surface. This air typically flows at equal speeds over the upper and lower surfaces. There's some aerodynamics involved. One surface may be going a little bit faster than the other. And this produces lift, which allows the airplane to essentially defy gravity and fly. Here's my first stall of this flight. Just watch, the nose is pointed up right now, and you're going to see it drop. If you look in the inset down in the bottom right corner, you can see the stick. You can see me moving the stick. In the beginning of the stall, I'm holding the stick back. When the nose breaks, when the nose drops, I actually move the stick forward to recovery. It's not a perfect recovery, but it works. And I chose to leave that in there just to show you that nothing bad happens. Plane is still flying. You recover from the stall, and life goes on. There's no yaw involved in that stall, so we don't go into a spin. Here we're doing a clearing turn, both to keep us over our practice area and to look for other aircraft to make sure we don't run into anybody and nobody is snuck into where we want to be practicing our maneuvers. In another second, I'm going to straighten out the wings, and we're going to go immediately into another stall. Keep your eye on the lower right portion of the inset. You can just see the top of the stick there. When I straighten the airplane out, you'll see me pull the stick back, and my left hand is on the throttle. I'll be pulling the throttle back to idle. And once that nose drops, you're going to see the stick move forward. Now I'm a little anxious here. My recovery, I push the stick a little bit too hard forward, and I pull it back a little bit too much. We get a secondary stall. Not a big deal. I finally get my senses back, or whatever you want to call it, and get the airplane flying again. We're going to do a third departure stall here in a few seconds. We're actually climbing to regain some of the altitude. You lose altitude when you stall an airplane because the wing obviously isn't flying. This airplane is an aerobatic airplane, which means the wing is set up to fly equally well when the airplane is upright and when the airplane is upside down. In the Cirrus, the wing isn't designed like that. It's actually designed so that the wing will stall in near the fuselage first to still give you controllability on the outside of the wing. So it's a little more docile, I'd say, in the stall than this airplane. This airplane, you get into the stall, you feel a little bit of rumble, and then the nose drops. The Cirrus, you'll feel the rumble for a longer period of time. So we approach this stall here, and again, just pay attention to the stick, and you'll watch the nose drop. I still futz this recovery up also. You can see a little bit of a secondary stall. The nose comes up, and then it drops again. So not a big deal. I had full control of the airplane, and I did recover it, but 3 of those is enough. The next stall is an accelerated stall. This is a stall where you bank the airplane, you're turning, and you slow it down, and it stalls. It's a demonstration of what could happen if you're not properly controlling the airplane and the pattern. We're in the turn now. We're letting the airplane slow, and eventually you'll see the wing drop. That's the stall. A natural response in this stall is to try to bring that wing back up using the aileron. But remember when I talked about spins earlier in the video, what's needed for a spin is a stalled wing, which we have when that wing is dropping like that, and yaw. Using the aileron, especially in that situation where the wing is stalled, induces yaw, which will make that wing fall even more and turn into a spin. So the proper response, which I did here, is to get that wing flying again, and that involves pushing the stick forward until the wing recovers, and then you can use the aileron to straighten the wing back out. I'm not at the controls here, but I wanted to show this because this is my reaction to the first time in an airplane spinning. Brian's at the controls, and he's demonstrating recovery from an incipient spin, which is just the beginning of the spin process. I don't show much emotion here, but that was a pretty wild ride, and at this point I'm thinking, wow, I really want to do this again. So we're getting set back up. When you spin an airplane, you lose altitude. We're climbing back to altitude so we can do it again. This time I'm going to be at the controls. The spin we're going to enter is done essentially like a stall. You stall the airplane and then you get the spin started. So what you're going to see me do is pull the throttle back, then pull the stick all the way back to my chest and push one of the rudders, either the left or the right. I think I do the left on these, all the way to the floor. You'll see the nose pop up, and then the nose drops away and the airplane begins to spin. So as soon as that nose drops away, for the recovery to the incipient spin, which is what this maneuver is going to be, you actually start putting the stick forward to install the wing, and you put opposite rudder to the direction the airplane's turning to stop the airplane from yawing. This is done gradually, and it's done simultaneously. I think Brian may have helped me a little bit with that recovery, but it was pretty wild doing it. And we go again. Incipient spin recovery, where we recover before the spin is fully developed. One more. These next demonstrations are recoveries from fully developed spins. To accomplish these recoveries, we have an acronym called PARE, P-A-R-E. The P stands for power to idle, the A stands for ailerons to neutral, the R stands for rudder. In this case, it means opposite rudder to the spin, to stop the spin. And once the spin is stopped, you use the elevator to unstall the wing and then get the airplane back to a level flying condition. These steps are done deliberately and one step at a time. Rather, during the incipient spin recovery, we unload the wing and push the rudder at the same time. And this is a fully developed spin where the airplane's allowed to turn a couple times. If you watch the nose of the airplane, it doesn't stay pointed down towards the ground. It actually rises up, then drops through the turns. And that's what this demonstrates. During the recovery, we actually started spinning the other way. Be honest with you, I don't remember if I recovered that or if Brian recovered that, but it was still pretty cool. Don't be hard on me, folks. I'm learning. And honestly, this is a prime example of why we get out and practice things in aviation rather than just reading about them. Reading about them, understanding the process is one thing. Being able to make your hands and feet do what they need to do under a stressful situation like that takes practice. And here's another one. Watch that nose bobbing up and down as the airplane spins. What a wild ride. That was fun. And this is the final spin that I do. Again, another wild ride. This was probably my best recovery from the spin. Honestly, I could have done 10 more of these and I would have been up for it. But this airplane, when you fly it in the aerobatic mode, has a limit on it. There are fuel tanks in the left wing and the right wing, but those have to be empty when you're doing these aerobatic maneuvers. There's one tank, it's actually in between my legs, that has 14 gallons of fuel. The engine in this airplane can burn up to 21 gallons an hour during these maneuvers, so you have a limited amount of time that you can fly around. But I do have time for one more maneuver. This isn't part of the program, but this is part of the capability of this airplane. So I perform a loop. At the beginning of the loop, I'm pulling about 4.5 Gs. Get over the top and then back down, and to get back out of the loop about 4.5 Gs. Which is probably about half of what somebody like Mike Goulian experiences on his flights when he's doing his tricks. In fact, he probably experiences more than double that force. But it was enough for me, and it was a blast. Well, that's it. I'm going to wrap this flight up here. We take the airplane back to Plymouth, Massachusetts for an uneventful landing. For my pilot friends, I highly recommend that if you haven't done this, that you give this type of training a try. It really helps to see how to recover from spins and to actually feel the airplane when it's flying close to the edge of these envelopes. Frankly, it helps you stay out of these conditions that can cause these issues, such as stall spin and the pattern, things like that. And if, God forbid, you ever do find yourself in that situation, you have the tools to recover and hopefully prevent a tragic outcome. For my non-pilot friends, that's why we do this type of stuff as pilots. Stalls are part of the training for a private pilot license, and the purpose of that is so that you understand what it feels like when the airplane starts approaching a stall. There are warning systems. It was disabled on this airplane for these demonstrations, but they will tell you that a stall is imminent. And the goal of this training is not to actually go out and do this stuff when you're flying in your airplane, but to recognize the conditions and where it'll happen, and to avoid those conditions or break the chain. They call it the accident chain. And there's a bunch of links, and the links here are, you get close to a stall, you're flying uncoordinated, and you get into the incipient spin and then the fully developed spin. So hopefully long before you get to the stall, you break that accident chain and you continue flying happily. But if you do progress along that chain, each step of it, you're given the tools to get yourself out of the predicament. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like. Any comments below, leave them. I'll try to get to them and answer them. Take care.